there's set of questions here, right, that I have that I'm going to be asking these fine people here. One of the things that I did want to lay out that, and they all have expressed the same thing, that any of their answers are strictly their opinion. It's not something that they're doing in their company, or it's not the company's. So it's just wanted to put that out there. So let's start. Well, let me go ahead and introduce. Why don't you guys introduce yourself, Rohit?
Rohit Rajpara. I'm a CISO RIA custody. Used to be called Folio Financial. We got acquired by Goldman Sachs a few years ago, and ever since we keeping as autonomy from the larger Goldman Sachs due to the regulations and all those requirements. I started my journey from a data center build, and then I moved into CISO role about 10 years ago. Did various CISO roles in the firms. Did from startups to all the mid-sized company and larger firms. Now we just doing is technology leadership and building the management team and all the great cybersecurity leaders. That's about it.
Hi, everybody. So I know we're standing between you and raffle prizes and drinks, so I'll try to make this as succinct as possible. So I'm Whitney Palacios. I actually work with Nish, and I work for CareFirst, BlueCross, BlueShield. I'm the Director of Security Operations. So within my portfolio, we've actually built a SOC in the last 5 years. That's when I joined the company. Stood up kind of some risk management functions, threat and vulnerability management, and I come from, prior to this, a military and government background, which I guess if I had to pick a specialty other than talking, it would probably be threat intel, insider threat. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Yeah, thanks, Whitney. Yeah, Jitendra, Chandna. I'm the CISO at Maryland Department of Human Services, and primarily responsible for the digital transformation cloud migration effort, which is a fairly big, almost $500 million effort.
Jitendra, can you bring the mic closer?
Okay, almost $500 million effort to the AWS cloud, and very fortunate to be part of that program because I worked in the industry before consulting, and I've learned a lot more in the last 2 years than what I did 20 years prior to this. So come from a consulting background, not necessarily a networking background that you will see a typical CISO grow into. So I have a different view of all things security when I talk about it.
Thank you all. So let's start with the first question, and it's something very fresh, very recent, right? It's on everybody's mind. So with this war going on, Russia and Ukraine, right? Nation-state attacks are on everybody's mind, right? So let's start with Jitendra, since you're in government industry. Governments are prone to be more attacked, especially in nation state, right? How have you responded, and what kind of status are you communicating back to your leadership or boards or up the chain secretaries or things like that?
Okay, so to be honest, if we say that we did anything different, I would say no, right? Because it was always important for us to be secure. Now, we did do certain things differently, right? So from a firewall perspective, we made sure that the communication that is coming from Russia is totally blocked, right? Made sure that we went and looked into all our configuration and made sure that, okay, whatever is coming from there, if we don't have a need for any sort of communication, we block that. The other thing that we did, and actually this came down from the governor's office, was we moved to the cloud. The idea was moving to the cloud is, okay, you don't have to do anything paper process. Like you have multiple availability zones, you have multiple regions. So you have this hot site prepared for you whenever you need to transition. And but in this scenario, we had to go back and look at all our plans. What if the communications in Maryland went down, right? How do you move to a pen and paper process? So that was the additional thing we did. And we did do a little more monitoring from our end, right? To see if are we seeing any nefarious activity going on. But apart from that, again, regardless of the situation that is going on in Russia and Ukraine, right? The important thing for us is to be secure at all times. It doesn't matter what happens anywhere in the world, right? So that's my take on it.
Oh, that's good. Rohit or Whitney, do you guys have any feedback on that?
You are the one from the intelligence background, so.
So I'll disclaim again, this is my opinion. This is not on behalf of the company, HR. So I actually have a very different view on this. I think that most people have panicked and they've done the knee-jerk reaction because this is big and it's scary and it makes headlines. But I feel like if we do anything differently than we did the day before, we're doing it wrong. Because realistically, this threat is not different than the other cybersecurity threats we already face. Threat actors are going to do what threat actors do. They're going to use VPNs. They're going to obscure their traffic. They're not going to come in and say, hey, it's Russia. Can I scan your network? Okay, thanks. Yeah, let us in. It's never going to happen. So for us, our company is very good about, we have a lot of assessments. We know what our capabilities are. We know our strengths and weaknesses. So we're able to look at that at any time and compare that to the particular threat. And that's what we've done in this case. We have taken additional steps and measures, but those are very often driven by policy. They're driven by things such as even like insurance requirements, liability, right? Like these are the things nobody wants to talk about, because at the end of the day, if my firewalls aren't already configured, I'm already in trouble. So that is just my opinion.
I will add one thing to that, is as a financial firm and a business perspective. Generally, when guidance comes on, company need to make sure as compliance, and for a financial firm, mainly they need to worry about the OFAC's sanction list. So if anybody is following that, whatever sanction list comes, we need to follow that guidance. So that's an extra step we added on top of everything else we do. We do have 24/7 SOC and stuff, and pretty much everybody does. So they take care of the first layer and all the visibility, and that portion gets there. But additionally, on a management side, they need to make sure that we compliant with all the government rules and regulations.
So common theme here, we shouldn't address it as a new thing. We should be doing the same thing every day, right? So that's a good answer. I do want to, I think I'm going to put all the sales and sponsor people here on the spot. I'm hearing too much noises from the back, and it's sort of either mildly rude or disturbing here, people. So I'm going to ask a question that you guys would be interested, right? So I often get a lot of cold calls, and everybody probably here does, from vendors, right? I'm going to ask them, so what is it, from their point of view, what is a good way they should be contacting us so that they can get the foot in the door or get that 15-minute off their sales pitch with us? So let's start with you, Rohit.
Make the best product.
That was an excellent answer. I really like that one.
Yeah, make the best product. You don't need to find the people. They will come to you.
I can't follow that one up.
So yeah, send an email from the governor's office. No,
Right,
it's again, as he said, right? It's we are all trying to solve a problem, and if you feel that you have a solution for a problem that is very prevalent in the industry, that is something that is going to get you in, right? It's like, and there are a lot of problems out there to be solved. Right? For example, there was certain product in a cloud service posture management area when the Log4j happened, and we were trying to analyze and understand where we had Log4j in our environment, where are all the places. And we were trying to do it like initially manually, but we were doing POC with this product, and they were able to configure something for us that gave us the information at the click of a button, right? So now that is a lot of value for us. So there is no doubt that we are going to procure the product. It's as simple as that. There are a lot of problems to be solved. You go to the industry, find out what those are, and then you can meet any one of us in this forum and basically talk to us about that problem. That's how you'll do.
I can add I can add that to one thing. Like generally, if you provide a POC to the any firm or any CISO and says, "This is my product. Try it in your environment with your product, and let me know how it works." Because most of time you give the sales page or you provide the demo or anything else that don't really works in a real environment or might be not solve the problem what they're looking for. So if you give them as a POC saying, "I'm at your door, this is my product, test it out, and then let me know." That might give you the first impression of how good this product is.
No, that's, I think all of these are right answers. Whitney, did you
I have one little item to add. Please don't make it look like a phishing email, because I have literally had vendors submit it as fishes, and that automatically blocks you.
Yeah. So really, some of the really good points make good products. I think for me, what generally works, I'm going to just say it out, that cold calling does not work. I mean, it's annoying. I'm on calls every day, and then somebody calls me, and I tend to give everybody, if there is an initiative in that area, whether it's identity or threat, or I tend to give everybody a few minutes to sell their product, right? But if there's no initiative, then I just hang up, right? So let's. I think someone mentioned, Jitendra, you mentioned Log4j, right? So let's go to next question. There have been several major vulnerabilities publicly disclosed, like zero-day, such as Log4j and SolarWinds, right? So Whitney, we'll start with you. What are you? Vendor risk management, the third party, addressing the third party products as Log4j.
Okay. Specific to Log4j, I actually think because this was such a unique scenario that it's an opportunity for the industry to actually work together to better our capabilities and our response time. And when I say that, because I think everybody struggles with third-party risk management. Everybody is nervous about their partners and their partners' security. A lot of people are struggling to trust the documentation and evidence being provided by their partners, because we have to take everybody at their word that they actually have certain controls and things like that. So I think that right now is the time to build out those stronger relationships, to relook at our processes, see if there are frameworks that we can implement that allow us to have increased levels of trust or transparency, whatever it is that we decide is most important to our business. And then, of course, in terms of responding to those level of vulnerabilities, I think that you have to have an integrated, basically, response team, right? Because your typical vulnerability management and teams that do patching, they're not the ones that are necessarily going to be able to go into your code libraries and take a look around. They may not be able to do that. So you have to know very clearly who your POCs are throughout the business, and we have to work with the business to identify these things. So I think it's a lot of heavy pre-work before things hit, and once things hit, then we still have to do those things, but then it's a scramble and it's a lot more panic.
Right, and I've seen Whitney staying busy in that area over the last couple of months.
So I look at this problem as the larger supply chain risk management problem, right? And call it the information supply chain. When you look at the vendor community now, and how do you know what risk they present to you, right? And I think the industry is starting to realize it with frameworks like CMMC, right? And there is an effort to go down the pipe, go down the stream, and see like how does each player in the entire supply chain, what role do they play, what information they might have within their environments, and how do you secure them and make sure that they are secure, and like compliance is a piece of providing that security or assurance to that security. How do you make sure that they are doing the right things so that in the end everything is secure, right? And till the time that happens, I see that these frameworks are going to grow from, I think DoD is actually getting it a start. I've heard that a lot of civilian agencies are going to follow it. There is talk within certain states to follow that framework, and I'm sure it's going to go down the commercial route too, where people will have to follow these types of frameworks to make sure everything is secure.
I think Jitendra and speak about the fourth party and vendor-related risk. I think one aspect of that every company struggle was finding on their own side how they know that what impact they have from Log4j, and that's a very first question they came. Every CISO was stumbling to find out, like, okay, were we using the Log4j? And probably, I don't know how many is engineer or works on keyboard and know that. If you go to any company and ask them, like, where you have Log4j, nobody had a perfect inventory. So everybody was struggling on an inventory. Some companies might have automated way to figure out or have a repository, centralized repository to figure out. But if you look at lots of open source software or something, they have Log4j as a default log management tool. Sometimes they're not using it. It just comes with inbuilt in a software. So even if we're not using it, the last portion of Log4j patch came up that was particularly to address that. So that's where lots of companies fail and left over after, I think, version 2.15, I believe. It's something like that.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I think this afternoon I also mentioned about having a good inventory of your application and these vulnerabilities and open libraries, and so I think that's the key, right, to address it quickly. So one of the things that I think I'm going to move to next question, and which is sort of related, that as these incidents happen, right, one of the first things that we as CISO or directors, we are required to do is provide that metrics quickly to our leadership or to board as to how vulnerable we are, how risky we are, that inventory, right? And so Rohit, let's start with you. Do cybersecurity leaders generally understand how to talk to board or even senior leadership and present the metrics in the form that they're looking for?
Yes and no. There is no clear answer because what board is looking is they're not looking in a tiny details. They only cares about you answer it in a one line. How much risk we have, probable, maybe percentage-wise, or any metric that you can provide. They are certainly worried about way more than cyber because they have to worry about compliance, they need to worry about regulation, they need to worry about business risk, because first and foremost, their job is to secure the business. Cybersecurity is one aspect of the business, so they need to check on every aspect of that, how much risk we have, compliance risk, operation risk, regulatory risk, and then comes to cybersecurity risk.
Anything, Whitney, you want to?
Yeah, to add on that, so I would almost make the correlation between talking to the board, almost like when you have insurance. Most people don't want to know the ins and outs of the policy. They don't want to know that. They just want to know they're covered, right? And that's really at that level, they want to know they're covered. And cybersecurity is a service provider within the business, right? And we're supposed to provide that service. So they want to be able to rely on our answers and know that we have that covered. So I think that I've personally witnessed we have a very good group that speaks very well to the board. They translate really well. They do a very good job of understanding what's really being asked and providing that answer. So I've seen a very good situation there, but I've also noticed a trend with many companies where the boards have, depending on the particular board, they started shifting into very in the weeds questions. And I don't know if that's because the board members are more technical or if it's because of headlines from Gartner, Forrester, pick your company publishing what every CEO needs to know, what every CIO needs to know. Those articles hit the streets, and then you can expect within an hour you're going to get the question of, well, which server did you patch this morning for this very specific thing? And the person asking may not actually understand that they're talking to you about a desktop. So.
Right, and Whitney, what I've seen, Jitendra, I'll come back to you. I think to that point, what I've seen recently is a lot of the boards now are putting a ex-cybersecurity person as a board member. So a lot of the detail level questioning is coming because of the presence of cybersecurity person within the board. So Jitendra, your thoughts?
So from an understanding perspective, I think the understanding is growing. At least the need for cybersecurity, or I would rather call it information security, because exposure can happen in any form, and I've recently experienced it. So, and so not specifically from a hacker or a hacktivist group, but it can happen anyway. So the understanding is there. The board, the leadership now realizes the importance of good cyber hygiene, good information security practices within the organization. So that is there. But the other portion of it is there is that knee-jerk reaction, right, that you hear about everywhere, that it happened. Again, we are living in an atmosphere, the way we, like, it's the reality of our times. Something is going to happen. It's not today, someday later. So the important thing is how resilient the organization is, right? Is it going to cause a survival risk for the organization? That is the thing that they should be worried about. Like, okay, exposures happen. If you go on the road, you drive a car, there is every possibility that you will meet with an accident. There is like an absolute certainty. You put a website online, within 5 minutes, something would have scanned it, right? So, yeah, sure. And so that is going to happen. So don't be alarmed by that. Like, it is a normal thing these days. Understand it. Just find out what sort of impact it is going to happen on make on the organization. What sort of like, the best part of being in this industry is not being in the news, right? That's what I would say. Till the time you're not in the news for a very bad event, you're good.
Right. So, no, that's exactly right. No, thanks, Jitendra. So this leads me to next question, and I think some of this, Rohit, you answered it, but I want to get a little bit deeper into this. Is do we as cybersecurity leaders need to develop more business skills to be effective? And how often should we be talking to CISO? And I'll give you my example, and Whitney's probably seen this. Being from technical background, right? I struggle at this as a bit communicating the business, business skills, and promoting into talking to boards and senior leadership. And a lot of times I do run by my wordings to Whitney, and then she corrects me on how to do it. And thanks to you. But I know I do struggle. But do we? Just because I struggle doesn't mean everybody struggle, right? But do we? Have you seen this? Is this a common thing that cybersecurity leaders need to develop more business skills?
I would say definitely yes, they have to develop that. Just take the general board meeting in your mind, how the board meeting runs. First and foremost, they go with the financial result, what's the quarterly results and stuff. Then board goes to the compliance issue, legal issues, then regulatory issues, then whatever internal stuff that CEO or somebody wants to talk, or CIO wants to talk on any changes coming up, or any senior leadership, they have the plan. And then comes the general business where resiliency, cybersecurity, and all this area comes in a picture. So cybersecurity is definitely need to be there, but you have to be effective with a 1 slide or 2 slide to communicate to the board, or they're gonna get bored with the numbers.
Sure. Whitney, I'm sure you have examples.
He's making jokes. I actually spent the first year or two of my time in my current company being reminded that I had to be nice to people. Apparently, I'm not good at peopling, so you've been warned. So since then, actually, I spent a lot of time working on the business skills and being able to communicate with different audiences. And my takeaway from that is really that it's not just talking to the board. While that is great, the way I view it is also my job to partner with all of the different elements of the business to understand their needs, what I can do for them, and what they need to do for me in return. And the reason why I think that's so key is because a lot of the challenges we're facing in the industry, like, can you guys believe it's 2022 and we're still having to tell people to stop clicking links? Like, it's insane, right? So to fix those types of things, you need a cultural change. And that saying, I don't know who came up with it, but I heard it in lots of leadership classes that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I firmly believe in that, because you can put together the greatest strategy, you can tell your board, you can get the buy-in, but if your workforce doesn't believe you, if they don't believe in you, they don't believe in what you're doing, and they didn't buy into that vision, it's never going to happen. So I think that you have to have those skills, business skills, soft skills, to be able to communicate the strategy and get everybody else on the same page with you. That's the only way we're going to succeed at doing those sorts of things, because creating those sorts of change and embedding security into the culture of a company are significantly harder challenges than finding an architect or a technical resource.
So as Whitney touched upon it, it's more of a cultural change. So when I joined the organization, the first thing I did, sat with the team and said that we are never going to say straight off no, right? Because you do it many times, if you do it time and again, people are not going to approach you. They are always going to think about you as a detriment to whatever they are trying to do. So that's what we decided on, right? And that has helped us a lot, in the sense, like, okay, if somebody comes says that, okay, this is the security issue we are having, right? Or we bring it up, we say that we'll figure out a way how to do it, because there are multiple ways to do a certain thing. It's not just one way. But if you just come out and say no, that's not going to work. And that and then building partnerships, right? So I was able to actually build a lot of partnerships with the other leaders within the organization. And I've told my team, right, my job is to make your job easier. So if you feel that there is an issue that is blocking you, talk to me. I'll go and talk to the various leadership. And that one-to-one interactions with the leaders has also helped a lot. So it's never to say no. We'll say, okay, we'll try to figure out a way. And there is always going to be a way where you can meet both the productivity requirements and the security requirements.
So those are good answers, building relationships, right? And this afternoon when we were talking about API security, I think we touched on it. I think it was the CareFirst gentleman from CareFirst Commercial. He gave examples of, like, in application security, there was multiple vulnerabilities, but they were false positives. So they had hard time communicating to business as to what these vulnerabilities were, right? So how critical it is when you're developing that relationship, because we as cybersecurity team, we do our scans and we get a list of vulnerabilities. We then hand it over to business. Hey, go ahead and fix your application or fix your operating system, right? But sometimes they need a little bit more detail around it. They need proof. They need, and generally speaking, that's the struggle that, at least in application security side, we don't have the detailed view of their code, right? And we may not even understand the code also, but we know that there is because our scanner said there is a vulnerability, right? So how is it, have you faced that kind of situation where it's critical to come up with and convince the business with evidence-based, and have you had successes in that, Whitney? Or
So I actually think this comes down to, it should come from the top down, not even security down, because it's the person at the top of the company has to decide what their risk tolerance is, what their business objectives are, and what matters the most to them. And then it's our jobs to make that happen. So vulnerability management is no different, because often we need to patch something. We have a 0-day come out. We need to do it right now, except it's a 4-day weekend, it's a holiday, and all of our server admins just left for the weekend. So somebody has to make that decision. And if you already know your risk tolerance and you know the appetite and attitude of the company, you know whether or not you're going to call that person in to patch tonight, or if you're going to wait until Monday morning. So I think that that's a big key. But then there are other times where we get a lot of pushback saying, well, if we patch this, it's going to break this other thing. And I think everybody has experienced that. It will impact operational uptime. And again, that ultimately comes down to somebody has to make a decision. And whether it's your CISO saying, you know what, we're not accepting the security risk, or it's somebody higher up saying we can't take the operational downtime, that decision is going to come, and once it does, it's our job to provide all the information we can, give everybody an informed description of what the actual risk is, and then move forward. But I think the challenge in that is that I don't know that many companies that are doing a great job at being able to categorize their assets, inventory their assets, and tell you the actual value and criticality of each and every one of those. So without those items, I think it remains a challenge even for really good security departments.
Yep. Agree.
So again, I can say, like, I have a sort of a different answer to that. Now, the fact that once it was established that we don't say no to anything easily, right? Then it was also established when we say no, we really mean it, right? That there is an issue that needs to be solved before we can move forward. So again, it's again a cultural change, it's a partnership, it's a top-down approach, bottoms-up approach from security awareness perspective. Like, I am actually very happy and that one of the exposure we had was actually reported to us by the citizens of the state, right? Now that is something very important that is happening in the industry now, or in the country for that matter. If regular citizens understand that this is not the right thing, and they are bringing it to our attention, right? Then there is something that is positive that is happening within the environment. So the awareness is increasing. Again, probably I'm digressing on the answer here, but from vulnerability perspective, you understand you have to provide them justification of why we need to do a certain thing. And if we have the proper justification, I don't think anybody is going to oppose it, because like everybody knows who is saying no to it, and if something happens in the future, it's that person's responsibility, right?
So question was mainly around how do we communicate a false positive?
And do we provide
Yeah, or
evidence?
they provide the feedback, pushback saying, yes, it's not, we don't want to fix this vulnerability or something like that. I personally, my view is I have Friday rules. Every Friday, I take afternoon, sit down with the different teams, application teams, system teams, Unix team, Windows team, database, all those teams, sit down with them, what's going on in their area, understand them, create that relationship, and when that relationship comes in a really handy when issue comes in. When issue comes in around database with application or something, I can directly ask them, can you tell me your assessment on this vulnerability? And they can give me the real great answer on a detail. And that's based off my going back to my vulnerability scan team or my vulnerability management team saying, can you give me your details on that? And then that's a base of my data, I can make a decision how much risk we have, and we can enforce it. Because I guess everybody know that last 2 years, every December, probably Christmas time, one big vulnerability comes up and everybody struggle to patch it. So that's kind of a script right now.
So that's good. As you can see, Whitney said, it should be driven from top down. And here's our CISO. He spends every Friday meeting with teams. That is a top-down approach, right? And not depending on his team, but he takes the initiative. And then justification, what Jitendra said. So I think these are all good points. Having seen these all December attacks or multiple zero-day attacks that we've seen in the last few years, or a lot of ransomware also, right? What are your and let me put it this way: what should be the we're getting all these high priority items. Do ransomware analysis. Do you got to make sure you're NIST compliant, or zero trust, and what should, as a CISO or a leader, what do you focus on? Where you should focus your initiatives on?
First and foremost, it's always about business enablement. What business wants, that drives. Like technically we are service provider to the business. What business wants, we provide that service. They want security from us, we provide security to them. We are supporting the business to make the growth in a business side. So if they says we need to increase the security, we need to increase the security. Now, if we wants to go in a detail and says like how we want to do it or something, then it goes based on a risk, how much risk we have. Then we quantify the impact of the risk, and based on that we can provide assessment to the business saying this is your risk and that's the impact. Do you want to spend this money here or you want to beef up the security? And based on that we make the decision.
So it's again, as I don't know how many of you might have seen it. Like if you look any of the LinkedIn site, you might see a mind map, a CISO mind map, right? And you'll see there are a lot of things that a CISO has to think about. Right? It's not just technology. It's again, and as Raj pointed out, we are a service provider to business. At the end of the day, the business has to run, right? And what would help the business run in a sustainable manner is what you need to focus on from a security perspective, right? Whether if you're in a highly regulated environment, then regulatory concern, compliance concern, right, along with security is very important. If you are in a research-based environment, how do you protect your IP is going to be very important. It has to be a business-driven decision and a risk-based decision based on the type of business that you're doing, right? But again, there are certain components of security everybody has to have, right, around governance of it, around making sure that you have the right engineering team in place to sort of implement your identity and access management system. So there are certain basic elements that everybody needs, right? So how do you build a program, cohesive program around all those elements is going to be a very important factor of what you need to do.
It's a balance between
Yep.
what want to do. If they want to do like it's a startup company and says, okay, we need to buy $1 million firewall, that's not going to happen. So you need to come up with a balanced environment that you can protect it as much as you can with business in mind.
Right. Thank you. So next question is, I think I ran into couple of young people today, fresh out of college, right, looking for jobs into cybersecurity field, right? And so I have twofold question here. One is, what are you guys doing to get more younger people into the door? Do you have some special programs? And then the second question, I know it's more close to Whitney. She leads our WIN chapter at CareFirst. So looking at the crowd here, we're still diversity there. Yes, we are diverse here, but we're still lacking in females. So are you guys doing anything around diversity, especially when it comes to hiring new talent? Let's start with you, Whitney.
So yeah, as you said, this past year, I was able to found a women's resource group at our company, and it was the first time we've ever had one. So that's actually a really big thing. And I had a lot of people reach out to me and say, hey, that the representation matters comment, it goes across all of the different affinity groups. And so I think that's actually huge. And I think even little things like this, like showing up and speaking when I don't particularly enjoy public speaking or peopling, I think those things matter because there's 2 women sitting in front of me, now 3, because she showed up, thank you. So our percentages just went up, guys, this is great. So I I think these things all really, really matter, because at the end of the day, if you can see it, you can be it. That matters. If you look at your representation at the top and everybody looks alike, that doesn't make me feel good that this is a place I want to work for. It's not a place where I feel like I'm going to be accepted, where I can be authentic. It doesn't feel like a place where I can grow. So those are things that I know in cybersecurity and in tech, we don't really like to talk about feelings and these kinds of things, but those things matter because we have a lot of talent out there and there are a whole lot more openings. So we have to really stop just talking about benefits and start talking about how can we take care of you as a person and what can I offer you that is good for you. So that is one of the things we're looking at, is how we can provide opportunities to give back to our local community, how we can support initiatives, and we're still looking for ideas, so we're open to feedback, and just trying to really do things differently because the status quo doesn't work.
So from a diversity perspective, I'm proud of the fact that I've got probably the most diverse team within the organization. But it's totally skill based, right? It's got nothing to do with diversity, to be very honest. So at the end of the day, when I talk to people, I try to understand what their skill is and what can they bring to the organization. It doesn't matter which background they come from, right? It totally doesn't matter to me. And again, there are programs that are out there which are encouraging different cultures to become part of the profession. Totally welcome them, and I'm open to anybody who has the skills to actually come and add value to the organization.
Yeah, it's pretty much same. Every company today try to be diversified. They have some kind of program running. Almost all big companies have campus hiring and diversity hiring and stuff to diversify on wherever they can. Sometimes they have the gap on skills that don't match, but wherever it's possible, opportunity is everywhere. Just need to look.
Thank you. So next question is more around the changing role of a CISO, right? So we've seen in over last maybe 10 years, the CISO role has really changed quite a bit. Used to be a while back, a few years back, CISOs were generally governance and risk, and they didn't care about technology that much. They left it to CIOs, CTOs to provide that technical solutions, and all they were concerned was, hey, these are the controls, and we'll come audit you, internal audit. You provide these controls to us. What we've seen over last few years, these technical teams have moved under CISO. So whether it's application security, identity, access management, all these technical engineering team and operational teams have moved under CISO. And lately, a lot of the organizations I've seen where CIO is now reporting to CISO, that's been a trend to me. What do you guys think? Is that an anomaly or a trend that's going to continue, and why?
My view is we still need to keep it separate, and that's the reason is segregation of duty. CISO is providing the security, and if they are also the highest authority on a technology, it's kind of collusion, like they can make a decision that's not wise for the company. So if having segregation of duty, CIO versus CISO, they're arguing with each other on a system, get you the more value.
So then your answer would be CISO should be reporting to CEO, not even CIO.
Correct.
Right? Okay, fair enough.
Especially for the segregation of duty.
Right. Whitney?
I agree with that. So I've been pretty vocal about that when talking to different companies that I've encountered and had conversations about job opportunities and things like that. I find it to be a conflict of interest when you have the CIO or the CISO, whichever way it works, it's a conflict of interest, and I think they need to be peers and partners, not direct report structured. And then you asked about the evolution of the job itself. So I had the opportunity a couple years ago. I spent a year as acting CISO for the company, and I did that coming from a completely operational background. I had no engineering background. And at the time, it seemed like all of my peers that I worked with, all of the really nice gentlemen, because there was, I think, 3 out of 36 were women, so mostly gentlemen. They almost all were exclusively from engineering backgrounds. And so they were very, very technical. And I am just in that time, since 3 years ago, I've seen a pretty big shift towards people that have the governance, risk, and compliance background in the roles.
Right, and I think this is something we all agree on, right? I think the CISO should be a separate organization, security organization, reporting into the CEO. I have seen somewhere where the CISO is actually reporting to the general counsel, I think probably from a risk perspective. And but I would rather see the industry move where the CISO is reporting to the CEO and the board. And again, this we have been looking for this change for a long time. I don't think it's moving as fast as it should. But there are changes happening, and it's going to be good for the industry. Again, boils down to the sustainability risk of the business, right? And when the boards do realize, the CEO realizes that cybersecurity, information security is a survival risk, then that change will happen more.
No, totally agree. I think all of us are on the same page. It should be segregation of duty. We should both be reporting to CEO, CIO, or CISO, right? So, thank you. Let's go into the last question. What's one takeaway you would give a CISO wanting to be more effective communicating to cybersecurity to the board and business leaders? So, and it's not just, I won't even say give it to CISO. I think any technology, the tech analysts or anybody, we constantly, everybody's put in a situation whether they're required to give some sort of metrics to their leaders, right? So what is the one takeaway you would give anybody here that if you're asked to report to business leaders or CISO, especially people that are only looking for that one-page document and not.
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, if you don't quantify on a business aspect of it, board is not interested or senior management is not interested. One simple mistake pretty much all technology engineers and managers make is they write a big email to the senior leader saying, hey, we have this problem, and then write down pretty much 3 paragraph worth of email. I personally see few emails and I respond back and say, can you explain me in a one line? And usually they have 100 emails coming a day. If you're making more than 2 lines, they're not gonna read it. If they are interested in a more detail, they will send you back and say, provide me more detail. Or you can attach it as a separate document, but just try to be very precise what you need to communicate to the senior leadership and try to be there. Especially if you're going with big companies or big organization where they are always divided on the decisions and stuff. You have to be business enablement and the metric centric. So if you're providing some data, you have to quantify that. What is the impact to the business, not the problem? You providing problem, you need to provide the solution as well. If you're just providing problem, that's not good enough for them.
So I actually am going to co-opt one of the things that is generally viewed as a negative. So everybody likes to talk about millennials. I love the fact that millennials have the no scroll rule. If I have to scroll to read your summary, I'm not reading it. So I love that because it does need to be succinct and to the point. And the only advice I would give is actually the same exact advice I give to my most junior personnel when we're having mentorship and career growth conversations. No matter who you're talking to, you should really be giving this same level of respect. It doesn't matter if it's the janitor or the CEO, but also put yourself in their shoes and figure out what they care about, right? Do they actually care about the specific details, or do they want this other level and that's what you communicate back. And that's a very hard skill. I think all of us probably continually work on, but that's always my advice. Make sure you understand what they actually care about, because that's how you make yourself useful to the business.
See, I can tell you, like, that's one of the hardest thing to do for the CISOs, right? What sort of metrics you provide to the management? As Raj mentioned, they don't really care about, okay, how many attacks did you stop? What they actually care about is the business going to be resilient? I think that is one of the metrics, and I still struggle with it. I actually, to be very honest, I don't know what sort of, the only thing I can say is, okay, we are not in the news. That's the biggest thing I can say. And secondly thing is, okay, if something did happen, how can we come back fast enough and with the least amount of impact? I think those are the important metrics, right? That we should be sure of when we talk to the board and the management.
Good. Thank you. So I think common theme here: be precise and know your audience, what they're put yourself in their shoes and see what they want to listen to. Right. Thank you. Thanks all three of you for taking time. And I will. I think we still have 5 minutes. I will open it up for anybody if they have any questions for anyone here. Anybody?
No API question?
No, I've got a question. I'm not technical enough for it. So I'm new to the security space. I came from the data governance space, and I'm with a company that works in both privacy and security. And one of the things that I'm starting to see is that privacy is starting to bleed under CISOs and become their responsibility, as opposed to something that legal and compliance is working with. So would be curious to get you guys' perspective on that.
So my understanding is NIST views that the same, and they're pulling privacy under like 853 and all those publications that we look at for the cybersecurity framework and the risk management framework. Privacy is now part of that. So I think that that's exactly where we're headed.
So there is an aspect to it, right? When we talk about data, we talk about all the privacy data, PII, PHI. Like at the end of the day, security is responsible protecting that data. But where the certain laws around privacy go, I don't think CISOs are still capable of understanding it. And I think there is that need for them to work with the legal organization to understand, okay, from a law perspective, if there was an exposure, does it mean that it was loss of private data? Because when you talk about PII, okay, your name, your address, your birthday, but everybody knows it, like all your friends know it. So that's actually, but if you combine it with something else, then it becomes actual PII. And that is where somebody who is well versed with privacy laws or understand privacy better, and if that CISO understands it, again, there are other certifications around. And I think that is a very specific area where I think CISOs need to work with the legal group rather than making a determination about it. But from a data security perspective, yeah, they are responsible for securing it.
So I think my final comment to that is he's right that the lawyers always need to be involved, because I never want to be the one answering questions of like the insurance commission or whatever. But whether the CISO knows the insurance requirements or knows the privacy requirements, it's probably the CISO that's going to get fired over it. So I would just suggest we go learn it.
Yeah, it's a partnership between legal and CISO, because reporting and regulatory requirement that goes under legal, where data security, privacy, to all the technical aspect, that's always been under CISO, even for years.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, guys.
All right. So if no other questions, we'll wrap this up. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.